So I want to talk a little bit about wholesales today. Sorry, I'm Randall. You probably already know that because this is my YouTube channel. And if you see the channel, you probably have interacted with me at some point. If this sounds weird in here, I apologize. This is the office. It's a big concrete room with not a whole lot of stuff in it. Just some desks and whatnot. It's super messy right now. They just got done moving some accountants into this little area over here. So anyway, so wholesaler overview. I have a lot of new people ask me, okay, so what's the deal with off-market properties and wholesalers? My immediate reaction is I just typically don't recommend them to newer investors, and there's a few reasons. So I have a quick little script here. It's not a whole lot. I don't want the video to be super long. We're going to end it with a walkthrough of an actual property, which we'll get into that a little bit later. But it's an interesting topic. I can't cover everything here. It's very complex and really infinitely complex because the way wholesalers do business is very different depending on who it is and how they operate. So the big thing right now is people they see these off-market success stories. A lot of times those are being sourced directly from the person that's bragging about it. They're putting a lot of money into sending people property or sending people mailers and calling them and trying to source their own off-market property. That can work really well. If I'm the one that's first in line, I deal with the seller directly. I give you 20 grand for this property. I know damn well it's worth 65. Of course I'm coming out ahead. But that's not likely to happen with a lot of clients because they don't have the time, the manpower. They're just lacking a lot of that. That's a company. That's a business that you're doing. You can source one deal here and there, but it's going to cost you thousands of dollars to even get that deal running. And trying to get people to, on the phone, and you have to have someone go out and inspect it and meet it. It's a lot of effort and work, and I've tried it. I'm not the biggest fan of even doing it. I don't like screwing the sellers over like that, to be completely honest with you. So here's some cons of it, working with wholesalers. First off, wholesalers are unlicensed, and that's by design. They don't want rules and regulations to cover them with all of this downside that they have to disclose too much that they don't really like to disclose. I'm gonna grab my coffee, sorry. To disclose a lot they don't want to disclose. That's the whole point of wholesale. You are actively screwing the seller over. You can brainwash yourself into thinking, hey, I'm doing them a favor, they're doing me a favor. In reality, you're the bad guy, and that's just how it is. I love wholesalers. I work with them a lot. But if you're getting a $20,000 assignment, that's money that should be the sellers, right? If they were a little bit more educated. So you're really taking advantage of that. They're unlicensed by design. So they have very few rules and regulations going against them. Very difficult to sort of circumvent some of those, but that's why you sort of have an agent to help you with that. Typically, so another con is they have pretty awful or I would say misleading numbers, and that's also a little bit by design. A lot of times it's ignorance, and they may not have access to a lot of stuff that agents have access to build their comps and really move forward with a lot of this stuff in terms of, okay, does this seem like a good deal? What are things really selling for in this area? I'm going to filter out some of the worst ones. A lot of this stuff's being done by off-sourcing it or outsourcing it, offloading it is what I want to say, to VAs and offshore people. So you have a lot of people in the Philippines, shout out to all my hardworking VAs over there, that just don't understand the local market. They're not in it every day. They don't have access to a lot of stuff that they need access to pull proper comps. They're going off Zillow, they're going off Zestimate, stuff like that. The numbers are just not very good. They say it needs 5,000 in rehab, the floor's got a hole in it. So if that's the only issue, someone shot a bullet through the floor, then yeah, maybe it needs 5,000 work and we can call it that. Oftentimes, whatever number a wholesaler gives is wrong. It's usually off by a lot. Another con, and this is my last con, I don't want to spend too long on this, is buyer pays the commission and the closing costs for the other side, almost every single time. Sellers, the whole point of a seller signing this awful contract and agreeing to these low numbers is because once they sign on the dotted line, in their mind, everything's taken care of. They're going to close, 3 weeks, 2 weeks later. They're going to have all their costs paid for. They're just going to get the money and call it a day. To do that, that's offset onto the buyer. So the buyer has to pay my commission or any agent's commission. They're not going to work for free, especially on a wholesale deal. So then a lot of people ask me, why do I want you involved? Well, a couple of reasons, and you may not. I totally understand if you don't. If you're local, you don't need me. I'm just going to be honest with you. If I bring you the deal, I probably expect something out of it because I got the deal for you and found it for you. But in general, you don't necessarily need a wholesaler, or not a wholesaler, sorry, an agent, to complete a wholesale transaction. Out-of-state buyers, why do you want me? I'm your eyes and ears. I'm your unbiased eyes and ears. I'm your fiduciary eyes and ears. I'm the ones that have my eyes and ears for you and your best interests. Wholesalers, again, do not have to treat you with respect. They do not have to be honest with you. Lacking a license is by design, again, so there's a lot of stuff they don't have to follow. I do, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a case study on the property you're going to see a video of here in just a little bit. But that's some of the reason why I think you want an agent, is I typically will get you in for inspections prior to you putting in earnest money. Remember, on wholesale deals, earnest money's non-refundable. I mean, maybe in a title issue sense, but it's non-refundable. Once you pay it, even if you don't like the inspection, you don't have an inspection clause to get out. You have an inspection period, but no inspection contingency. You can't really ask for that either. They will just deny you. They'll just move on to the next offer. Remember, they don't need your money. They're going to find some other person to pay it. But so let's talk about some pros. Pricing. That's the biggest one, right? I mean, some of these houses you can get, I keep going off frame, I hate it. Some of these houses you can get for insanely cheap. You can, on this one in particular, let's talk numbers on this particular deal. It was sent out at $40,000. So we had it under contract. We signed the contract and assignment. And in the area, in okay shape and still needing some rehab, houses are going for about 65. And it fully fixed up, they're about 115, 120. So the numbers made sense for this deal. The rehab did not. So we're going to get down to that. Again, going off wholesaler numbers, they said 25. I should have known better, but I still wanted to check it out anyway. I usually don't like to go to the properties. It's a lot of trouble to get in. It's actually difficult to get a wholesaler to allow you into a property, even if it's vacant, before you sign that assignment and contract. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If I'm talking really fast, I apologize. So pricing is the number one big deal when it comes to wholesale properties. That's why people are drawn to them. It's so easy to make money, and not everyone's going to be a home run, especially in the current market. Pricing is not great, but it's usually $20,000, $25,000 profit. Newer investors, they tend to scoff at that. Older, more experienced investors that have the money laying around, they don't have a problem with that. They're fine spending 3 or 4 months making 25 grand. So another big pro for wholesale deals is speed. If you got the cash ready and inspectors and rehab bids and all that ready to go, you're talking, you can get these closed out in about a week or two. As soon as title's pulled and cleared, you pretty much fun to move on. So from the time you get everything signed to when you're able to start work, pretty short. So it attracts a lot of hard money lenders, or people that use hard money lenders, because you can usually get this stuff done in the 6-month window. We'll talk about that a little bit in a second. Relative ease. So I just talked about how complex these deals are. The thing is, if you're experienced or you have an agent, these are pretty easy to close out, and it's not for the reason you might think. It's not the paperwork, which is a joke a lot of the times. It's because you have so few options. That's why they're easy. At the end of the day, the fewer options you have, right, the easier it gets. If an officer tells you to get out of the car, you have one option. It's to get out of the car. It's an easy choice to make, right? So that's where, and I know some of you guys may not agree with that. Apologies. But that's just a thing I throw out there as an example. But it is easy. You have so few options. You're buying cash or hard money. We'll get to that in a second. But those are your two options, essentially, on the front end. You pay the inspector to get a rehab bid and inspection. Some people don't opt for an inspector. As an agent, I can never advise against an inspector. Just keep that in mind. But a lot of my clients that buy off market have lots of success foregoing a licensed home inspector, just getting some contractors out. You're going to pay for those, $125 a piece for the bids, and if you do the work through one of the companies, they'll refund it. So you're going to have to pay something to get it. And then you're going to decide if you want it or not. If you do, you close. It's that easy. There's not really any negotiation. We can try, but remember, they have a conga line of people ready to buy this thing. We just got lucky and signed the assignment contract first. We need them more than they need us. I tell people a lot. So you can't get too negotiation happy. If you have to, or the deal literally can't make sense for you, we'll always try. I'm a big fan of throwing stuff out. But be aware that with wholesalers, it's not a formal process. There's not let's counter or send an amendment and see what they say, and they can reject it, but we're still in contract. No. With wholesalers, you say, you know what, we'll take it, but we want $10,000 off. Well, that $10,000 is coming out of the wholesaler's pocket, not the seller's. The seller will not go down their price, and they're usually not going to approach the seller to do it. If they do, they're even worse wholesalers than we thought originally. So it's coming out of their pocket, and they're not going to usually want to say yes to that. That's another big thing to keep in mind. Negotiations are very limited with wholesale properties. On this one specifically, they wanted the buyer to pay the back taxes. They weren't super high, about 900 city, 900 county, so $1,800 total, give or take. We did negotiate that to be paid by one of the wholesalers that was getting the biggest assignment, and he agreed. Hey, you know what? And we'll get into more of that a little bit later, but that's always good. That's some negotiation we were able to get done. So, and I know this is going on for a little bit longer than I wanted it to. I talk a lot, but I have this phone call a lot. So if I can just direct people to this video and they would sit through it for 15 minutes, great. So let's move a little bit faster though. So this is typically recommended for fairly experienced people because your lack of options. You have to be able to move fairly quickly. I can help you do all that if you are newer, but just keep in mind that you are limited in what you can do. So another big thing to keep in mind, it's cash or hard money only 99% of the time. Why? There's three big reasons that these are cash or hard money only. Wholesalers do not like loans. Why do they not like loans? There's three major reasons that I can think of, at least that the most common the most common sense ones. I'm sure there's some others, but lack of enforceable contract. Remember, as a wholesaler, you are not selling a property. It is illegal for you to do that. You are selling the contract. Well, the contract is usually this god-awful little thing written on a single page and signed by everybody, and usually not the cleanest. There's $10 in earnest money, which in any Tennessee court is not upholdable as a reasonable amount. So technically, legally, this is not an enforceable contract. Lenders want to see a TAR form or an otherwise equivalent enforceable contract. These just don't count as that. A lot of lenders will say, we're just not dealing with that. You have to have a bigger contract, and sellers aren't going to sign that. And wholesalers damn sure won't sign it. Closing timing. A lot of these are set to close 2 or 3 weeks after you sign. Some lenders can pull that together with the conventional loan. Not many, especially one that's going to be lacking a lot of paperwork. And what's the third biggest reason? Condition, of course. Sellers not wanting to do repairs. They want to do repairs, have money to do repairs. They would be selling it for $20,000 or half a market value, whatever the case is. So the condition is the biggest reason that these will just not be financeable. You might find a lender that can work with the awful contract and the closing timing, but you're not going to get anything fixed. So the house has to be in incredible shape, and houses that are in incredible shape don't get wholesaled, right? It's very uncommon. There's one on the market right now that's going through that. It is a war zone for that property because I think they are taking loans on it. It started off at like 207. It's in Bartlett. I think it's already well over 220, 230 because the market price is around 285 to 300. So it's a good deal, but again, it's a circus now because they're allowing loans on it. Creative lenders can find workarounds for this stuff. A lot of the times, you can get some construction loans, things like that. Again, it requires a seller to be involved. In this case, the seller just won't be involved. The wholesalers want to keep the seller out of it as much as possible. And again, at their pricing is almost a hard money lender pricing at that point. So you might as well just go with the hard money lender and not have to worry about near as many requirements. So assignments and fees. I mentioned earlier, when you buy an off-market property or a wholesale property specifically, you're not buying the property, you're buying the contract to purchase the property. They have a piece of paper saying, hey, I wish I had a piece of paper laying around. I have a cool Dunkin' Donut napkin from, I'm guessing, something that somebody did here, or Baskin Robbins. So they say, hey, here's the contract to buy the property. In this case, it's Scoops and Sprinkles, right? Scoops and Sprinkles, Main Street. So here's the contract to buy the property. You're going to buy this contract from me for an assignment fee, and that fee is going to be what I make, and you're going to purchase the property at the original price plus the assignment fee. In Memphis, and I'm sure in every market, they get daisy chained. So you have your seller, and then seller deals with wholesaler 1. Wholesaler 1 sends it out. Wholesaler 2 picks it up. Let's say wholesaler 1's assignment fee. In this exact case, let's do this case study. Wholesaler 1's assignment is $14,000. So they got under contract for 20. They sent it out for 34. Group B picks it up. They send it out and say, hey, we're going to send out 36. So it's another $2,000 assignment fee. Group C picks it up. They send it out at 38. Well, now we got two $2,000 assignments and a $14,000 assignment and the $20,000 due to the seller. So it can become pretty messy. By the time I see it or you see it or whoever sees it, we don't know what part of the chain it's on until we see the current assignment contract. Wholesalers are tight-lipped people. They again, a lot of it's fairly shady. It's a little bit misleading again, and it's very under the table stuff. So they don't want you to know what they know until you're in a position to sign and you're okay with everything. Again, though, you shouldn't fear these assignment fees. It's the cost of doing business. And at the end of the day, if the numbers still work for you, a lot of people seem to get really upset when they see some of these high dollar assignments. It's like, man, I'm sorry, you didn't source the property. They did. They have overhead on this stuff a lot of the times. You're talking about big companies that do this stuff. So they do deserve some money for it. But the problem is when you're a buyer and you're hit with these fees, I got to pay $20,000 in, or in this case, $18,000 in assignment fees, and then I got to pay your commission, Randall. And it's just too much, and I don't want to do it. That's a mentality you can have, and it's totally, you're in the right to have that opinion if that's really how you feel. But if the property is still worth it and it's $20,000, $30,000 less than market price, you can continue to feel that way and buy stuff off the MLS, and it's definitely more comfortable. And I don't blame you at all. You're just paying a flat commission at that point, and no one cares, or the seller's paying it, right? So that's a little bit of a breakdown how assignments and fees work. So now we're going to do a quick case study on this one on steel. I did get this under contract for a client of mine. It's going to be a quick walkthrough in a second. So the whole video is going to be about 25 minutes long. I apologize for the longer form video, but this is one of the first ones I've done where I'm explaining stuff fairly accurately. So this is, and I'm sure I'm leaving some stuff out. This is an broad overview of how this works. Short of having a wholesaler on here to describe how they do some stuff, this is about as good as it gets. So for this one, I sort of ran through it already. The property was under contract at 20, wholesaler, that sent it out originally had it under contract 14,000, assignment 34, 36, 38. By the time it got, it was 38.9. We went under contract at 40 to try to get it. So there was a little bit of a buffer zone there for somebody, whoever had it. And then they had to pay me my flat fee of 4,000. So that's 44 in. Again, in this condition, we thought it was a little bit better than it was. But assuming it needed 25, 30 in work, which is my estimate, based off the photos, which I don't usually like making estimates off photos, and this is why, you'll see the video in a second, because you just don't know what's going on in these properties. It would still be a fine deal. You're in it for 48 total, let's say, cash. You do your 25, 30 into it. Let's say you're in at 80 all in, with 32 in work. And the property you can get appraised for probably 115. So it'll work for you. It's a fine deal. You're going to pull all your money back out? Of course not. It's unrealistic in the current market unless you source the deal yourself. But it's still a fine deal. It's solid. It's one for an experienced investor to say, look, I can make enough money on this to move forward. So we did. We tried. Went out for the inspection today. No power. Big problem. Difficult to inspect the property with no power. So I met with the inspector, Eric, briefly. The video takes place after he left. I don't really want to film anyone else besides me. In those properties, in case there's any sort of issue with that. I don't want to drag someone else into it. But I filmed the property, the exterior, what I could, and it's rough. It's a strange house. It's not really a house. It's a Franken house. We got to the back and we're like, okay, something's going on with this rear addition, quote unquote. What could it be? Well, the addition's manufactured or even a mobile home. It's strange. It's definitely not something I've seen before. This siding is, metal siding on the side and vinyl on the front as like a fascia, sort of. So from the street, it looks like a normal addition. But then you dig a little deeper, you realize maybe this is manufactured. Then you get up underneath it. This was a manufactured home that was placed in the rear of this house and just connected. In Memphis and Shelby County, that's not permittable. It could be under very special circumstances. I didn't see permits pulled for this when we were doing our research on it. That's another thing I really recommend getting an agent for, looking at back taxes, stuff like that, insurance and permits, things like that. I can sort of research a little bit more easily than you can. You can always do it yourself if you want to. You can call the office and all that. I just have it accessible through MARDAT and some other stuff. But for this one, that was a big red flag because that was one of the areas once we got inside was in the roughest shape. So in in Shelby County and Memphis City, you can't just repair that and call it a day because this is probably going to have to be re-inspected by code due to the utilities being off for an unknown amount of time. So there's a chance someone's going to have to come in and inspect it. They notice that, which they probably will given the scope of their repairs. There's problems. So it would make a lot more financial sense to knock it out completely. Have it demoed. It's going to cost you $2,500, maybe a little bit more in the current market. Hauled off. That's going to be another $2-3 grand. And you have to wall that entire back section off, and that is going to be fairly expensive to do that right And you have to have the foundation guy come out and make sure it's done properly, or else you're just as screwed as the current owner without the permits. So that's where this one started to really fall apart. The front actual house is not that impressive. It's a 1-1 essentially. So that's where at the end of the day we had to spend quite a bit of money to knock that off. You have a 1-1. It's a good lot, huge, not huge, but for the area it's pretty big. Nice quiet street, nice street, lots of owner occupancy. I'm a fan of the area. I usually tell people Fraser's a little bit iffy, but this particular part's fine. So it could work. It could work even as an owner occupant once it was fixed up. But that was under the condition that it was going to be a 3-1. It's not a 3-1 in any realm of the imagination, man. It would be a 1-1 when this was done. So it just really couldn't work. So the numbers weren't right on it anymore once we got inside and we were able to crack it open like an egg and sort of check it out. So what's going to follow is a video of me sort of explaining some of this stuff. I mentioned the prelude to that, this part of the video in that, so just ignore it. But if you have more questions about wholesaling and how it works from a buyer perspective, feel free to call, email, you can comment on here, whatever. I probably won't get around to it because I don't know if I even get notifications on comments, YouTube videos, but you have my info. So just get a hold of me that way. Say, hey, Randall, I need to know a little bit more about this, or maybe you weren't as clear on this, or you back talked a little bit and I got confused. Whatever, just let me know. I can explain a little bit better. I've done lots of wholesale deals in the past, not many recently because the numbers aren't as good. Wholesalers are very competitive right now, and they are daisy chaining like crazy. So yeah, deal may start off pretty good. This one started off at 34, that would have been fine, but we ended up having an extra 6,000 in there that could have gone towards that rehab and demo, but it didn't. It went towards assignments, so that's where we had an issue. So depending on where in the chain you get it, could be a much better deal than later on. And once you initiate contact with that person that sent over the first time, it's logged and recorded. It's very difficult to get out of those assignments. It's actually just not even worth trying. But if the deal still makes sense after those assignments, it's fine. But yeah, with this one, it just didn't make sense. So here's a video of that. There's also a cool spider that makes an appearance. You'll see him hiding out in the bush. I do a quick little close-up. But yeah, check the video of the property out. Let me know if you would have moved forward on it. I don't think the numbers would have made sense after seeing the condition and the fact that it probably would have been a 1-1 when this was over. So yeah, just check it out. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions about this particular deal and how we came to the conclusion that maybe it wasn't worth moving forward on, that I didn't maybe express in this video, or what could we have done to make it work, maybe you're curious about, then just give me a call, give me a shout, let me know. But yeah, so for that's it. We're going to move on to the video to walk through, and I will have another video soon about more topics like this, agency, getting ready to list a property, getting ready to purchase property, just stuff like that, really basic stuff that I get a lot of calls about. I mean, I understand a lot of my clients are newer to investing, or at least investing out of state. So maybe they have some questions about that I don't really explain in detail, or they're just maybe afraid to ask. So I'm just going to throw the information out there. If you want to watch it, watch it. So really for now, that's pretty much it. And I'll see you in the next. Hey, it's Randall here. So we are in Fraser today to check out, this is an off-market property. We had it under contract, not directly with the seller. Actually, I'm helping a client buyer purchase it through the assignment process, and it's always fun to do. It's not the worst thing in the world, but this one's an interesting one. I'm going to flip the camera around here in a second once I finish my introduction. We're going to walk through it. It's a strange property. There's some weird stuff going on. We actually canceled the inspection due to the condition that was we were made immediately aware of upon checking out the property. The inspector just left. His name's Eric. He's a cool guy. But I'm going to flip the camera around. We're going to do a quick walkthrough. It's going to get dark in there. There's no power on, no utilities. That's the main reason we canceled the inspection. And here in a second, I'll just sort of give you some thoughts on it and show you some interesting stuff that I personally have not really seen before here in town. It just goes to show that when you have these houses that are owned for so long by the same people, you don't really know what you're walking into. And it's a big tale of caution for people that are looking to do off-market stuff, because it may seem like a really great deal, and it'll pencil out really well. But once you actually get to the property, get a chance to check it out, maybe not. So let's check it out.